okay? On behalf of the Chamber, I want to welcome Dr. Elaine Ducharme today. She's a great friend of the Chamber. She's been very involved with the Wellness Council. She's helped us so many times with our programs as a great speaker. She did some videos most recently with us for our getting through the holidays last December. She has a radio show. She has a practice in Glastonbury. Everybody that knows her just highly respects her, and we all love her. And Lainey, you can share your credentials, but thank you. She changed her appointments because I messed up the time. She had to change 2 or 3 clients, and we're just so glad to have you here, Lainey. Thank you for joining
you're
us.
welcome. You're welcome, Mary Ellen. The changing, I think everybody's really kind of flexible, because if I say, gee, are you going to be available at this time? Most people are home. We're not going anywhere. So it's a little bit easier to get people to change things around. So that's not a problem. I think before COVID hit, we all were stressed out. I mean, people are stressed out in general. Life is stressful, right? So there are all these things that go on anyways. But then COVID hit, and practically overnight, our lives changed. We went to bed one night thinking we had one financial picture, we had our relationships, we had our jobs, and the next day practically everything was changed. So I want to preface this also by the fact that May is National Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's really kind of a good point for me to be able to use this time to share with you some things about mental health. I have been the public education coordinator for the Connecticut Psych Association for the last probably 12 years at least. I kind of lost track of it. Nobody wanted the job originally. And then when I even decided I was going to try and pass it on and mentor somebody, people kind of just really didn't want to. You're doing fine. And the whole, in terms of the organization of APA, the position is sort of not 100% there anymore. So I just have been left with doing the public education, which is really fun for me because I get to talk to people. I do get a chance every month to be on WRCH radio show and talk live about just trying to educate the public. So one of the things that I thought when Mary Ellen asked me about this was I would talk about loss. I think we have had a collective sorrow. There's a collective loss of what we knew to be normal. So there are so many places where this loss has occurred. I think, excuse me, first of all, there's actual deaths. I don't know how many of you know people that have either passed away from COVID or are sick from COVID. But certainly those actual losses and deaths from the illness itself. And it seems like in the last couple of weeks, it's becoming closer to home. I've heard of more people that just one weekend, somebody's father got sick and 3 days later he was dead. So we're hearing a lot more of that. The other kinds of things that we've lost is our sense of safety. I'd like you to think about it, maybe even raise your hand. How many of you feel really different or weird now when you go to the supermarket? It's weird. I mean, I have specialized in trauma for 32 years as a clinical psychologist. I was a pediatric nurse and I did some cardiology before that. So I've been involved in trauma, physical, mental trauma, emotional for years. And yet my husband's retired and he was doing all the marketing. And I decided a couple of weeks into this, maybe 2 weeks ago, I would go to the supermarket. And because, for most of our lives, I've run the household in terms of the food. So, I can give my husband a list, but I'm missing things, whatever. So I decided to go and I got there. And this experience, I'm sharing it with you because I think it may have an impact for everybody. I walked in and people all had masks on and I didn't have a mask with me. And it was before we were required to wear them, but I had a scarf. So I said to the guy at the front desk, door, should I put this on? And he went, well, better to be safe than sorry. So I wrapped myself in this scarf and in about 30 seconds, I was itchy. So now I'm trying to not be too itchy and I'm wearing the scarf. And finally, I just said, this is ridiculous. I cannot make it through here because I'm just too itchy. I'm scratching my whole face. So I took the scarf off and I'm going up and down aisles and realized that they were out of peanut butter. I mean, I wasn't worried about toilet paper, but when I saw peanut butter was gone, and then somebody said to me, excuse me, I just heard we're only supposed to go one way. and you're going in the wrong direction. So I felt horrible. And then I realized that what I needed was actually now behind me since I turned my cart around and I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, oh, so I kind of snuck a few steps backward, grabbed what I wanted and proceeded, got to another aisle and realized I had a hair in my mouth. And I'm like, how do I take a hair out of my mouth? I don't want to touch my face. You know, what's with it? And I finally checked out and I said to the girl at the checkout counter, how are you? Are you okay? Thank you for doing this. And, you know, how are you holding up? She said, I'm a mess. This is my last shift. I can't do this anymore. I'm too anxious. Went out and got in my car. I came home. And by the time I got home, and people were wiping down their handles on their doors and the trunks of their cars, I got home and got the groceries away. And I realized I was starting to cry. And I got teary. And my husband had said to me something about like, what's up? And I said, well, no, I'm okay. Well, he went to do his thing. He's got a whole train thing going on in our basement. And I spent the day going back and forth from reading to getting teary. And it took me the better part of the day to realize that as a clinician and in my job, my role in life, I pick up people's emotions. So if you come into my office, I'm going to know how you're feeling long before you've ever told me. If you're waiting in my waiting room, I walk by my waiting room. If I'm going to the bathroom before I see you, I look in and I pretty much know where your emotions are. And I realized that I had picked up everyone's emotions and I had not been prepared for it. And once I realized that, I was able to process it. You know, when I do trauma work, I'm aware that's what I'm going in to do, but this I was not prepared for. And many people are empathic. Many of us in our jobs have to connect emotionally to our clients. So I use that as a point because later in the day when I was telling my husband this, he looked at me and he went, wow, you're the last person I would have thought that would have that reaction. You're a shrink. For God's sakes, you deal with trauma all day long. And I went, yeah, but I know what I'm expecting. I did not expect to be traumatized by going to the supermarket. And I use that as an example, and I'd like you all, maybe we can share a little bit about the experiences we've had that really took us by surprise, that took away that sense of, I'm comfortable here, I know what I'm doing. I didn't even know which way I was supposed to walk up and down the aisles at that point. So we've lost that. We've lost our social connections, our physical hugs. Huge one for our community is financial security. Like one day it was fine, and the next day, what happened to the market, you know, and where are our savings? The structure. Any of you guys have kids at home that are trying to study? I don't know if, okay. Trying to be a teacher and a parent and do all of your own work, and especially, and if you are a teacher and you're trying to teach other kids as well as your own kids, or you have 2 or 3 kids that all need you at the same time telling you they're stuck, what do you do with 3 kids saying, Mommy, Daddy, I need help? So there's no structure, that kind of disorganization, the attachments to people in general, and then our stress on our relationships. And I would be really remiss if I did not say, we are seeing certainly a higher rate of domestic violence and child abuse. We're seeing fewer cases of DCF being called, but the kids that are showing up in the ERs, excuse me, in the emergency rooms often have more serious fractures, and we're way more likely to be involved in a domestic violence incidents right now. And I'm not sure that having our liquor stores open is helping that situation, but I suppose it is keeping people from going into DTs who have drinking problems. But so I want to make sure that everyone is aware that should you know anybody that is struggling because they're, excuse me, being confined with somebody maybe they're thinking of divorcing or it's just stressful, that people are afraid to call the suicide hotline or crisis hotlines because they can be overheard. That the text number is, if you text the word home to 741-741, there is somebody that will text you just in a heartbeat back. And you can talk to somebody and figure out what you may need to do to be safe in this situation. My website has a safety plan for anybody that may need it. If you just go to my website, drelaineducharme.com, to help people that are feeling like they may not be safe in the same house. I don't want to get off too much on that topic because I want to be able to share and make sure that we are talking about the things that are important to you. So that was what I was going to start with, helping people understand that the grief you may be feeling is normal. And I'm seeing something here in my chat box. I need to open it. So, oh, okay, that was just you from you, Mary Ellen. You know, I want people to realize that it's normal and that there are a number of things we can do that are going to help us get through this time, because we will. As a group, look at how we've come together. There are really cool things that are happening. I'm having cocktail hours, virtual cocktail hours with my kids all across the country. The holidays with family across the country and across the world. So I'd like to stop there and see, you know, Mike, are there questions that people have, or, you know, so that I'm not just monopolizing this conversation?
Yeah, I'll actually, yeah, thank you, Elaine. That was great to start with. And I'll, you know, one of the questions I'll ask is, I tend to be able to handle a lot. My vibe is typically, you know, exploding with positivity, but I've surely been challenged. And so my question is, do you have any, can you share your thoughts on a few things that you can do to just settle down? An example, I've got more number one priorities than I've ever had at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, chasing loans, planning for the unknown in terms of reopening the business, dealing with helping employees daily with their emotions and anxieties, and and family and concerns over family. You put it, it's all together, and many people have it a lot more difficult. What calms me down is when I think about somebody on the front line and what they're dealing with. But I'm sure that there's many that are in my position, and many that don't have the same, call it the chemical makeup in terms of being able to, but I'm finding it very challenging. If there's thoughts about having depression, which I don't feel I have, but I can see how it would attack and take over somebody. So just your thoughts on some things you can do to settle down.
It's a great question, Mike, because as I said, you know, here I am, my husband's saying, hey, you're a shrink and you specialize in trauma. Why the heck are you upset? You know, because first of all, we are doing things so differently. You know, you're doing it remotely. So sitting and staring at the computer all day long and having to have direct eye contact with people all day long and those kinds of things, it's exhausting. Everybody is really way more tired. And we're home, so there's not the same, for many people, there's not the separation between, you know, you've got a half-hour ride back and forth. So we really do have to search for what makes us feel better. And secondly, prioritize, because we cannot be everything to everyone. So part of it is sort of trying to set a structure for your day and think about what are your top 2 or 3 priorities that must get done. But in between that, then scheduling time for yourselves. And for everybody, it's going to be different. The one thing that I think is universal for everybody is some form of meditation. So I happen to love the app Insight Timer. It has 30,000 free meditations. So if you can't find something that's soothing, you're probably never going to find something that's soothing. And they range from 2 minutes to an hour. Male voices, female voices, you can filter it by, I want music in the background, I want just music. It can be an inspirational talk. There's all kinds of things. So I really recommend that. I also recommend something that everybody can do, you can do it while we're sitting here, is abdominal breathing. And that is, if you don't know how to do it, look it up online. We all normally take breaths by going and raising our chest, and it's really ineffective. And if we do 2 or 3 of those, we end up with a panic attack or being, short of breath and dizzy and falling over. So, but when we do abdominal breathing, if we do 2 or 3, just in between tasks or before we start our day, it allows us to stay more focused and just regroup. If you're feeling overwhelmed, focusing on the now, because where anxiety comes in is anxiety is always about, I screwed up something in the past. What do? You can't fix it, right? And then, or usually you can. And a major one is anticipating some horrible thing happening. You know, the world is going to fall apart. My clients are going to hate me or whatever. We're all going to go broke. And 99% of the time it isn't true, but we start worrying about it. So if we try and stay in the moment and get ourselves grounded, we're probably more efficient, and really setting that schedule so that we don't overwhelm ourselves. You know, finding things you like to do. So one of the psychologists told me that they, at the end of their day, they and their wife do a puzzle. They work on a 1,000-piece puzzle. It soothes them. They relax over it. To be honest, if I had to go downstairs and do a 1,000-piece puzzle, you would have to hospitalize me. I have zero visual spatial skills. I am horrible at it. So forget that one. I'm going to go watch some stupid TV show or, maybe eat a piece of chocolate. So one of those things. Does that answer your question, Mike? I mean,
yeah, no, that was great.
Grounding yourself.
Yeah, that was great. I also look for signs, which is kind of I guess we're a little holistic, our family too.
Okay.
But, and so as you were talking just now, I looked up and a hummingbird just kind of appeared out of nowhere and came over for a sip of water. So the hummingbirds are back.
Yes, they are.
And all is good. So thank you. I'm gonna open it up for other questions as well, so we can. So anyone else have a question for Elaine? Jim?
I saw Lori raise her hand. Ladies first.
Yes.
Thanks, Jim. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Ducharme, for sharing your grocery store visit, because I felt exactly the same way. And when I usually like to go to the grocery store, but I'm like, oh my God, it's so different now. And then I'm walking the wrong way and somebody's going by on their cart and saying, hey, you're going the wrong way. And then I had a few steps before I reached to what I needed to get. And I was like, oh my God, I want to get out of here.
I know. It was such a basic activity. And it's a trauma now.
Yeah, and I used to like to go. So so I really refrain from going as much as possible and try to get everything I need. And it's just so strange. Everything is. So hopefully it's not the new normal, and it'll dissipate at some point where you need all the masks and everything to gear up just to go into the grocery store. But thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And I do think it's going to change. I mean, if we look back over history, and that's really the thing to look at, we've gone through SARS, we've gone through AIDS, we went through 1917, there was a flu epidemic. We do get beyond it. It just may not be tomorrow. And so I think we have to remember that most of us are really pretty resilient. Mm-hmm. And if you feel like you're not as resilient as you could be, we have lots of information. I'm happy to share with Mary Ellen, and somehow maybe we can post it. I have a great thing on resilience, 10 ways to be more resilient and develop it in yourself. Because I think that's really what we're doing. And probably the most important lesson that we're teaching our kids and ourselves and even our clients is how to survive really tough times. Mm-hmm. We've been going along and things were normal and our kids are normal and oh my gosh, I can't go outside now. Well, we think back to World War II and Frank, who was confined in this tiny room on top of a house and couldn't speak for how many years, the long, long time. And so if we think about our resilience, that can really be hopeful too. And if we watch for the hopeful signs, and the biggest thing I'm going to tell you is to stop watching the news, please.
Right.
It's awful. It's just awful. Like once or twice a day, hear the main facts, go to a reliable source, go to CDC website or listen to that, and then just stop listening, because it's almost like telephone. I have watched somebody give a message and then a reporter take that message, and the way they've said it to the next person was just completely different. And I'm like, really? Okay. So really cut that down. That helps a lot with anxiety.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome, Lori.
Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Well, it's an observation and a question. Is that I've been in business for 15 years, and typically my first reaction to anything that doesn't go 100% right is to get very stressed out about it. And I have been finding myself, other than at the very beginning when this started, kind of being very calm, very zen, and recognizing that there's nothing I can do about it. And in 15 years of business, I've never experienced that. And I guess I find myself sitting here listening to you and the other folks, and why? This is not me. This, who has inhabited my body and made me calm about these things I can't control. Just a curious observation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I just think that's great, Jim. Thank you for sharing that, because, in some ways it says, well, we can do things in crisis, we respond differently. So I've seen families, for example, that are divorced and they've been arguing over everything, right? You know, they couldn't figure out, you know, a meeting place to exchange the kids. And yet when COVID hit, they really started worrying about their kids' safety, and they came together and they managed it well. So sometimes, some families that it goes in just the opposite way, obviously, but I think sometimes when we're really put to the test, we rise to it. And it sounds like you've realized there's nothing else I can do. So I'm rising to the occasion and I'm functioning maybe better than I thought I would. And so keep that in mind about yourself. So maybe you change your self-thought, is that instead of saying a person that the minute something goes wrong, I freak out, is to, hey, wait a minute, you know what? I don't always freak out. I'm a person that can manage it. So when you start to freak out, you know, in the future on something, slow yourself down, breathe and say, oh, you know, I've handled some pretty tough stuff, and reframe your own self-image.
But that's great. I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll add another comment for you, Jim. What I just listened to, you should do a video and tell that story of yourself and tie it into your brand, and that you're in a whole different place to be able to help people with their brand, just based on your Zen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Great idea, Mike.
down.
Excellent.
I'm looking around. Any other? Yes, Deborah.
Excuse me. I have a slightly different situation because I started this whole thing ill.
Oh.
I might have had it. I don't know. I won't know until they have the antibodies test, but I was ill for like 4 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And that was like beginning of March. And then I had this cough that lasted. And so by the time I felt safe enough to go outside, because I was worried about making somebody else sick, you know.
Right.
I went to the grocery store. I had a similar experience, but I also I was wearing the mask for the first time. I had to leave the store and take it off so I could breathe the fresh air.
Right.
So I put it back on and went back inside and reminded myself I actually was getting enough oxygen, and then I was fine. So the thing is that when you go to the store and it's a new situation, it's a new situation. And not like you, I pick up on the anxiety, you know, like when a person realizes you're facing the wrong way in their lane, their eyes widen. Right? Or they move to the side, or they jerk backwards, or they start walking backwards, you know. And so in the beginning, you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. And, oh, look at those big arrows on the floor. I didn't see those on the other 8 lanes, you know.
Yeah.
And then you understand and you know what you're doing, and it's okay. And so you can go back to the store with confidence because now you get what's going on.
Right. Exactly.
It's like
it's the not knowing. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like the first day of school. You don't know what's expected. And then after that, you roll with it.
Right. And that was why I shared that experience, because, you know, when I see trauma patients, I am prepared to talk about trauma. I do it all day long. I've seen and dealt with some of the most horrific traumas. And yet going to the supermarket just was the thing that put me right over the top. And when the next time I went in and I knew what I was doing and I had a mask, it was all okay. It was still weird. I mean,
Yes.
It's not like my favorite thing in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, it's when we don't know and the unknown. And I think that's one of the things that's happening is we aren't sure when going back to work.
My thoughts about the store, you know, because now that technically I'm elderly, I just go in for that hour where everything's been cleaned up. So
Right.
I'm like glad about that. And the other thing I wanted to say was you're talking about direct eye contact. For me, that's the thing I miss the most. For these kinds of interactions, because I've been on the internet for many things, there's no direct eye contact. If I want to look like I'm looking at you directly, I have to look at my camera. I can't look at the screen because then it looks like my eyes are down. And I miss the direct eye contact. So when I go outside, and I go outside every day when it's dry, I walk, and the people on the street, I purposefully say, hi, how are you? So they will look at me and have just a moment interaction, you know, and people going by on their bikes, I say, hi, how are you? And in the grocery store, I say, hi, how are you? And it turns it into a more positive experience.
It really does. And I will tell you that I have done video conferencing for about 17 years, because when I lived in Florida and I moved up here, I had patients that wanted to continue with some of their trauma work with me. If they were stable and I had backup, I would do video conferencing, and then I would go down like every 2 or 3 months and see them in person. So I was comfortable, and I've done it with college kids, but to do it like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week or 4 days a week, frankly, is exhausting. But I did learn something, Deborah. Do you like Deborah or Debbie?
Deborah, it's my
Deborah.
grandma's name.
Okay, so Deborah, I found, and I don't know if you can tell here because there's so many faces, I'm not sure where I'm looking, but I actually raised my computer up, because you're right. When you're looking at the center of your computer screen, everybody thinks you're looking down. But by having my computer, I have a file thing that it's a stacker. So you can put papers on, in each level, and I lifted it up so that it probably could come up one higher, but I don't have another one. But I've raised my computer up so that when I'm looking, does it look now more like I'm looking at you?
It does. And I have mine up on the box too.
Because that makes a difference for people.
Looking like I'm looking forward, but
Can everybody please
do people when I'm doing that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said. Somebody must have said something in between.
This is Mike, and you just gave me a crazy idea. So I'd like everybody to put one of your eyeballs next to the camera so I can take a screenshot of everybody looking in. So it's kind of like this.
We're doing this. Wait, where's my face? Okay.
Or just
into our own cameras.
Everybody in. It's just a fun little photo. Done. Hey, we're just having some fun.
Now, you know what? That's what we have to do. My daughter came up with a great idea on Facebook. Every day she started asking a question, like, what's your favorite ice cream? What's your go-to movie when you really need to laugh or cry? And she's an attorney and in Springfield, and she started doing it, and people really connected, and she'll get like 100 of her, closest friends. I don't know how people have 100 close friends, but I couldn't keep up with that all. But the reality is that everybody's loving it. It's just something fun to do. And whether it's looking for fun things on Facebook, concerts from 300 people all over the world playing and singing the same song, those are really fun things we need to remember to do, and look at the amazing things that have actually happened with COVID. I have a little bit of a theory, and somebody here may say, oh my gosh, that's crazy. If we were living in biblical times, many of us would be saying God's really pissed off at us, I think. Okay. We've had floods and tornadoes, and now we have COVID, and Passover actually got canceled because of a plague, which was really rather ironic because we talk about the 10 plagues. And so, all these things, but in that short time that we've been at home, the air is clearer. The dolphins have returned to Venice. We're connecting in ways that we've never before done. I'm meeting all kinds of new people in video chats like this that I've never seen in person, but I've maybe heard their names. So I think that's really important to remember, those positive things and the fun things. Thanks for bringing that up, Mike.
Sure. Anyone else like to?
Yeah.
Oh,
I have a question for some tips on helping angsty young adults survive this, the added depression and anxiety. They're not as easy to entertain as little kids. I can't just give them a bucket and take them to a sandbox or, play silly. There's just so many things they won't do. And I'm worried.
What age are we talking about?
20.
20. Okay. So sort of college age kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some of them are really struggling. I mean, it's not, most of them have been living somewhere else and now they're home. They're not used to, and really in some ways aren't meant to coexist in the same house with their parents, with the same rules. They're used to being able to make decisions on their own. And so for them, I think that group is suffering probably the most. There are some really good resources out there. One of them, I believe, is through Give an Hour, but I will see if I can find, I had a list, I don't have it with me right now, that you'll be able to find some specific kinds of things. But one of the things is to try and help them understand that, you know what, this is really hard. Acknowledge their feelings. I think, they're very much an electronic group. Okay, they stay connected with their friends on video and on phones. So one of the things that's been interesting that I've been having families do is have making sure that even when they're not used to doing this, that they're 20-year-olds, that they're all sitting down to dinner without phones and using that time to really just talk about things and whether we can figure out a movie to work on or a puzzle to do where it's time away from the electronics. These kids, when they're taken away from their electronics at school, actually many of them get anxious. I mean, it's physiologic anxiety. It's not just that we're kidding about it. So this is a really new experience because their lives have changed. So teaching them that, wait a minute, here's some things you need to do to be resilient, good opportunities for them to sign up for free classes. There's all kinds of things being offered out there that they can look up. Maybe they can learn a little bit about meditation to learn how to manage their anxiety, because this is probably not going to be the most difficult thing that they'll ever deal with in their life. It may be the most difficult thing they have dealt with so far. But if we can teach them, okay, this is what I'm doing, here are a list of options, because a lot of the kids will say, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not going for that hike. No, I'm not. I mean, my daughter called me one day, she was beside herself, and I said, well, just tell them you don't care, let them figure it out. If they're that bored, let them go clean the toilet, and she was able to say, oh, okay, and the kids do figure it out eventually, but they're used to having things organized for them. And this isn't happening. So I do think exercise, making sure those kids are getting the exercise. YouTube has fabulous channels on, I don't know, for those of us that are not in as great shape as Mary Ellen doing all of those wonderful runs. I walk with Leslie Sansone, who is very dorky in some ways, but she's wonderful and you don't hurt your knees. And she has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mile walk you can do on computer. So those kinds of things. But then remembering that if that person seems like they're really struggling beyond, normal, like I'm just sort of pissed off at you, Mom, that reach out for help. Most therapists are doing virtual sessions and we're taking new patients. So making sure that they know that they can get connected to someone. And then maybe arranging virtual meals with a family of people that they know as well, so that you can engage that way. Those are just a few suggestions. I don't know if anybody else have suggestions of what they're doing with their 20-year-olds.
Well, ironically, this is the generation that's best prepared for this, because
I know.
How long have we told them, get out of your room, get outside, go do something, go play with a friend, right? But on the downside of it is they are so connected that they're constantly fed information, right?
Right.
And right now, the information that's fed is all the negative information. How many deaths are there? I had my son coming to me every day, giving me an update of how many died in New York. And I'm like, why do you care who died in New York? But it's just constantly fed, and the information is just constantly fed into the head, but they are well equipped. It's just redirecting the attention.
It is redirecting the attention. And one of the funny things about it is we're hearing kids that we never thought we'd hear, things like my 15-year-old grandson who has dyslexia and is a great kid, but school clearly was never his absolute favorite thing, said to his mother the other day, I just can't wait to get back to school. So we have, these kids who have, we're beginning to appreciate, I just want to go outside and play with my friends and actually see them. So some of it is that the deprivation of actual contact and only relying on virtual contact is helping people sort of get a little tired of just virtual and missing the actual physical, which is a good thing. So I know I saw somebody's hand up.
EB.
Hey, everybody. Dr. Ducharme, thank you so much.
Please call me Lainey, guys.
Okay. I have a sophomore in Boston at college. She's at Tufts, just to give you some reference to exactly what's going on. But I totally agree with you on the college thing. I think what's challenging is it just seems like you get them in a good place, and then the school will say, oh, we're thinking of maybe having you guys not in the fall at all. We're going to do the fall and the spring and go into the summer. So then there goes junior year abroad. You know, her internships have been canceled. Right. She canceled her summer sublet with all her friends who work in Boston. So every time you turn around, there's just another huge change to their overall trajectory. So now if she doesn't go abroad and they don't go back to school in the fall, it is hard. It just seems like you get them settled and there's like another huge change that, you know, you're like, okay, great, now we're doing this for a year.
Yeah.
You know, not
and
just
that's
now.
really hard because it's the not knowing. You know, it's the constant change. We can usually adjust to something if we know what it is, you know, whether it's going to the grocery store or whatever, or if I know for sure I can't go back to school until, you know, September 3rd. All right, now I can make a plan. But we don't know a lot of this. I mean, parents are really struggling because they don't know what kind of summer arrangements to make for their kids. You know, if work opens up and they can go back to work, what about daycare and what about schools? So, you know, and the college kids, I know a lot of families, their kids they had to move out of the dorms very quickly, but all their things are still up in the dorm. And families are trying to figure out, well, when do we even go back? Are we going to be allowed in? How do we do this? So that really is hard. And I do think for some of the kids that are struggling, talking to somebody, talking to a therapist can be helpful. Or if they're really at that point where they're struggling. But also trying to figure out, okay, well, you can't do this. Let's come up with a plan that is doable, that we can count on for today or for the next couple of weeks only. But it is a struggle. You're right, Evie.
I have the other side of the spectrum. I have an 87-year-old mother who's been isolated in her home for 52 days. She happens to be in the hospital right now for another issue, which is not COVID, and should be coming home. But she said it's impacting her brain. She's very sharp. She hasn't lost any of her marbles at all. She went to the gym 3 days a week, went to the store all the time. So she has been just removed from any social interaction except for us kids on the phone. And she's hearing impaired, severely hearing impaired. So she doesn't want to sit on her deck in case a neighbor walks by because she can't hear. But she was saying that she felt that in 50 days, she's aged 10 years, and mentally she feels a huge difference. And I'm sure it's depression, but also just going out to the store for her first time. Actually, she went over to buy eggs at a farm where she wouldn't be around people. But she says she thought she was going to have a panic attack just thinking about driving. So
it's very
scary. I don't think it's uncommon, but how do you help somebody out of that situation?
Well, you know, it's a really good question, Mary Ellen, because I think for people who are, first of all, I mean, your mother's amazing that she's been doing all of this. Yeah. And then suddenly all of those social stimulation, is taken away. And if she doesn't hear well, she can't really be using some of the things that we're all doing, whether it's binge watching TV or, you know, having conversations. So she's used other resources, and, you know, all the things you were describing were things that were filling her up. So the loss of her normal life is absolutely having an impact. You know, the loss of social connections for families, people that have parents that are in nursing homes and you can't see them. The loss for people who are being isolated and stuck in places, it's really, really hard. And so trying to figure out ways of connecting virtually, or even if you can take her someplace where she can, as things begin to open up, or listening to a concert from afar, you know, like on video kinds of things that they do, where we're actually watching a loud music concert from a distance. We're not actually there. I think, you know, Mary Ellen, as much communication as you can have with her, because you're right. There are two things. When you say it's affecting her brain, it's definitely affecting mentally when we lose that stimulation. I mean, all of us. I clearly am not 22 anymore. And some of the things we all want to do things to keep our brains going. I play words for friends in French just to keep my mind, you know, going. I speak reasonable French, but I can't, you know, my brain doesn't connect words in the same way as it would in an English Scrabble game. Your mother was doing all these things that were keeping her brain going. And when you take all of those away, I'm not surprised she feels like, you know, that, oh my God, what's happened to me? So, there's not a really easy solution other than trying to find as much, first of all, normalizing it for her, letting her know that this is normal, this is going to get better, and we're going to try and do everything we can. Arranging virtual visits, maybe having people outside her window in her house with signs. They're sharing lunch. I have families that are bringing lunches to their parent and sitting outside on a porch, and so that they're having some conversation, and that's going well for them. Anybody else have some creative ideas they've done with relatives that are older? Because all of those things are important. Yeah.
We've gone up to my mom and done the porch thing too. But she has a caregiver who got locked down with her. And the caregiver drove her to Elizabeth Park, and we met them at the park. And she sat in the car, and we stood next to it and talked, 6 feet away.
Great idea. Can't hear you.
I have a similar situation.
Who was just talking?
With
Diane.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I have a similar situation. My parents have been isolated in Florida. And so, yesterday we did a Zoom call, and I researched, the airlines, because, they want to get back up here. And, I was calling and saying, okay, how full is this plane? How full is that plane? And, my daughter also is in the front line. She's on COVID units. So she's very freaked out about my 82-year-old parents getting on a plane. And so I booked a flight yesterday for them on a fairly empty, plane, probably a quarter full, direct from Tampa to Hartford, because I'm going to have them come here because it's not as hot a zone as Boston.
Right.
And within the minute that I did that, to see the panic on their faces. So I had to go back in and upgrade them to a business class so they could be the first ones on the plane, and they paid like an astronomical amount of money just because you could see the panic setting in. And
right.
The day before that, I have a cousin dying of cancer, and my mother said, if you go see her, you won't see me. I mean, it's just complete panic in them, and I don't know now how to handle that or what to do, when they come home. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be wearing masks and putting them in my back seat and taking precautions, but I don't, they've been on their own now I think I left them in early March, and they've been, and they're doing great and they're healthy, but how do I overcome this panic?
Well, first of all, have you been in isolation, pretty much quarantined for 14 days? Or are you interacting with a lot of people?
I'm not interacting with a lot of people, but I've been to a grocery store and,
Right. So, so there is a minimal possibility of somebody being sick. I mean, and the reason to wear a mask is primarily because if we don't know we're sick, we could be spreading the germs. Mm-hmm. So it might be, I would probably be just checking with their doctor and saying, is there anything, do they have major underlying health issues, and that you might wear a mask around them for a while.
Oh yeah, I will.
So,
sure.
You're using your basic CDC precautions, you're washing your hands as best sometimes we have to recognize there's only so much we can do. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and then recognizing that, for them coming up here, first of all, them flying now, it's probably one of the safest times to fly because there aren't many people on the planes. My son-in-law is a pilot for Americans. So I know, when they get on the plane, my daughter, is always a little bit nervous because he's flying. But the planes are fairly empty. They're washing them and spraying them pretty well. So it's probably one of the best times to fly. And I think by having a direct flight, that's fine. And then just using your own techniques of remembering there's just so much I can control. What benefit is it to all of us to be able to be together? And sort of you're minimizing as many risks as possible. And, keeping them, whether your doctor feels like you should be social distancing, even in the house for a little while. But if nobody's sick or has been sick and they haven't been around anybody, the chances of them passing it to you are probably minimal. But, just using regular precautions, washing hands, maybe not hugging, right away. Yeah. Doing those kinds of things, and then just trying to remember, wait, this is the gift we have to enjoy each other. And I need to let that panic go and just recognize, you know what do I have here that's the good? And how can we enjoy that? And sure, it's hard, but that's probably the best you're going to be able to do.
Yeah. No, it's more
makes
that
sense.
they are panicked, and I don't know how to help them with their panic.
I think just letting them know. I mean, do they want to come up, or is this
Oh
something?
yeah, they did. No,
Okay.
they definitely, like, they wanted to come up next week, but the numbers on the planes are too high. Like, you know, it's more
Okay.
than half full. It's, you know, whatever. And I want a plane that's less than half full.
Right. So I think, you know, they may be panicking right now and worrying. And I think just simply reassuring them, having contact with them, start talking like this, if they can do a Skype meeting, because you're seeing each other. And then probably once they're here with you, that panic will go down. Once they get through that, and just sort of maybe are they willing to listen to meditation kinds of things? Would they be, you know, consider that?
I don't know. I might suggest it.
You might suggest it, because I know that some people who don't, I mean, people believe, oh, I can't meditate. I don't know how to do it. My brain goes. Yes, everybody's does. Experienced meditators' brains go like this all the time. You just have to remember to bring it back. But if you could sort of introduce them to something that's very calming, that sometimes just the music in the background sort of slows your breathing down, and it doesn't matter if your mind goes off, if you're connecting to that music, and just remind them, just sort of listen to this music or this voice. This is a really soothing voice. Do they have a pet by any chance, a cat or a dog? Okay, because
No.
for many people, just petting their animals is very good. But sometimes watching movies that are pleasant, helping them kind of get through that, teaching them how to breathe. If you could probably do that on a video if they don't know how. But then recognizing some of it, you have no control over that. If they're gonna panic, they're gonna panic a little bit.
Yeah.
They still want to come. So just keep reinforcing that, hey, we're gonna be together soon. And what shall I be making? Change the topic. What do they want you to cook for them?
Okay, good.
Okay.
Now I'm off
Diane.
mute. So I was going to share, and this might relate more to Mary Ellen's comment and perhaps Diane. I just had this conversation. My mother and father-in-law. My father-in-law is 92. My mother-in-law is 86 or 7. They're isolated out on an island, Fisher's Island, and so they're going through a lot of this as well. And I just spoke with my mother-in-law about this yesterday. She was telling me what really helps her get through this, and for her, it's the constant contact. We communicate every day, our family. Both my daughters are sharing photos and calling and doing FaceTime and showing them their babies. They both have babies. But I think, like, one of the things that I found is really helpful, my mother-in-law loves to cook, and so do we, but I hate baking. But I took an interest in it because I know she loves it recently. And so I asked her, you know, I want to make an amazing rye bread. So just walk me through it. And she just woke up. I mean, every day she wants to tell me something different and to try this and make sure you do that. And it's just putting her in a totally different place. My father-in-law, I know, his interest is about raising bees and smoking fish. And so I just ask him, you know, what's going on? And I'll just sit back and he'll talk for 10 minutes until he finally says, all right, that's enough for today. But it wakes them up just talking about what they're interested in. So that's just another thought.
I mean, you're giving them a purpose. That's really important. You know, you're giving them a purpose. They still have things to teach you. So you're validating their skill and really giving them some reason to be here, because that's when you're isolated and nothing to do, as you start to lose your sense of who am I and what am I here for. That's
By the way, if you saw me making this bread, I was in the anxieties were all over the place, because I can cook anything, but not bake.
They're very different skills.
I'll share. I can't find it now. It's on my phone. The bread was amazing.
Wow. For your first time, Mike, bread's hard to really make. Wow.
It was amazing.
Excellent. Nice job.
Where did you find yeast?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mary Ellen.
Well, that was half the fun. And I think that's what really gave my mother-in-law, she had some laughs, and because I couldn't find packets of yeast. So I found this big pound of instant yeast at Whole Foods, and then could not find how to convert, how much to use. So she told me how much to use, and then she called me back and said, I really think you need to double up. So I had already worked with the dough, so then I had to add it. It was just crazy. But I have anybody needs yeast, I have a lifetime supply in my freezer right now.
You realize, guys, we're all going to have the COVID-15. You know what I mean by that? When we went to college, everybody was expected to gain 15 pounds because suddenly you were ordering pizza out. So it was called the College 15. And everybody that's home, we're all baking and eating and doing things. So anyways, yeah.
I call it the COVID-19.
COVID-25.
There's my.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
There's
That's
my
'cause
ride.
Duncan's an overachiever.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I'm going to have to check off in a couple of minutes sign off because I have a patient at whatever time it is. It's coming up on 10 o'clock now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Diane, I got a suggestion for you for your parents. While you've upgraded them to business class, they're usually the first ones to get on the airplane.
Yes.
That would be the stupidest thing they could do if they're
I
really
told
concerned.
them that. I
Tell
told
them to sit in
that.
their lounge and wait and be the last people to get on the airplane. They'll still have a place for their luggage. The place will be clean. They'll spend the least amount of time on the airplane.
Right.
Please do that.
I completely
Status on
agree,
the
Paul.
airplane is the dumbest thing ever because the only thing I ever get to do is watch everyone go by
Oh.
looking for where's the next row. I don't know. They're in order. So
If I could just interrupt for a minute before Lainey signs off, I want to thank you so much for such a really, really wonderful session. But can you give us your contact information?
Sure. My website is at drelaineducharme.com. My office is 860-633-8962. Although I do get my phone from the office in my email, I'm going to just give you my cell phone if anybody needs to reach me. It's 860-202-3182. And my email is there. It's Dr. Ducharme at drelaineducharme.com.
Well,
We have all of that.
we can't thank you enough. We're so grateful
it's a
that
pleasure.
you've been such a wonderful chamber member and such a great contributor to our Connecticut River Valley Facebook group. Your resources are tremendous, and thank you for your time today. And
Oh,
thank
you're
you.
welcome.
everyone.
And really everybody, I always feel guilty I'm not being more active in the
Thank you.
chamber. But thank you guys and good luck. Everybody stay healthy and just remember to breathe. Take
Thank you
care.
for your
Lanny, thank
time.
you
That was
so-
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank